turning to a leading lawmaker pressing for Donald Trump to finally come clean on his tax returns and saying she will lead on transparency. Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York is a 2020 contender and became the first presidential candidate this week to release her 2018 tax returns and calling on everyone to do the same. Here is her first MSNBC interview since, of course, launching her official presidential bid this past weekend. Senator, thanks for joining me.
I'm delighted to be on your show.
Tell us why, first and foremost, you're leading on this issue, and specifically, can you get President Trump somehow to do what others have tried and failed at, which is have basic transparency about his taxes?
I've been leading on the issue of transparency and accountability in government since I was a member of Congress and in 2006. I was the first member of Congress to post my schedule, my earmark requests, and my financial disclosure online. It was my Sunlight Report. I posted my taxes for the last 12 years. I started posting them in 2012. And I think anyone running for president should be posting taxes. I think this president should have post taxes because the truth is the American people deserve to know whether you're working for them or whether you have a self-interest. And one of the best ways to do that is have transparency. It's also why I led and passed the Stock Act to make sure members of Congress weren't engaging in insider trading, if you can believe that actually wasn't illegal. So we passed the Stock Act in 2012 to make sure, again, that we have accountability and transparency for people who serve in government.
As you know, a big story this week is the position taken by the Trump administration to try to actually get all of Obamacare wiped out. I think I know why you disagree with that on policy grounds and preserving health care. What do you think of their argument on the actual underlying tax authority, that somehow, because that's changed in the courts, maybe the law itself no longer has the basis that it had from the original Supreme Court decision?
So I disagree with their legal analysis because what President Trump's doing is he's undermining all of the tenets of Obamacare that actually help people, saying that you don't have to cover people who have pre-existing conditions, saying you can discriminate based on price. We used to have gender discrimination in insurance. He doesn't want you to be able to have a mandate where everyone should buy in. And this has already gone to the Supreme Court. And so for this administration now to unwind every aspect of the Affordable Care Act is an outrage. But it's one of the reasons why I'm fighting so hard to establish that health care should be a right and not a privilege. I hear about this no matter where I go in the country, whether I'm in Michigan or Iowa or in New Hampshire or in New York State. Number one issue out of people's minds is I can't afford health care and I want access.
Is that what you're asked about the most?
Yes, it's the highest anxiety that families have. Just imagine if you have a child who's sick and you're worried now because President Trump doesn't believe in covering people with pre-existing conditions that your child won't get medicine or won't get the medical care they need. So one of the things that I've been working on is in our Medicare for All bill, I worked on the transition part. I helped to write it. And I think if you could create at least one not-for-profit public option, letting people buy into Medicare at a price they can afford, something like 4 or 5% of income, it's affordable, it can be matched by your employer, and it can be self-sustaining. Ultimately, it gets you to single payer, and it could get you to something like an earned benefit, so that you buy in just the same way that we buy into Social Security.
Yeah. So let me ask you,
own it.
Let me ask you about that. The idea that there should be a much more robust approach to health care. Some people would say that's European style or whatever you want to call it, but you're talking about Medicare for All, which is government options for all, is something that a lot of the candidates right now are agreeing on. So it's not. I'm not sure there's a ton of contrast. I'm curious what you think, and I want to play for you one of your competitors and colleagues, Senator Sanders, who, if I'm reading him right, I'll give you a chance to respond. He seems to be saying that you are copying him. Take a look.
In 2016, many of the ideas that I talked about, Medicare for all, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, making public colleges and universities tuition-free, spending at least $1 trillion in rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, criminal justice reform. All of those ideas, people will say, oh, Bernie, they're so radical. And over 3 years, all of those ideas and many more are now part of the political mainstream.
Did he make those ideas mainstream or impact your thinking?
Well, I ran on Medicare for All in 2006, and I actually got elected in a 2-to-1 Republican House district running on Medicare for All with a public option, letting people buy in at a price they can afford. I ran for re-election in that congressional district, again, 2-to-1 Republican registration, and I won it by 24 points. So I've been talking about it since 2005. I don't know when Senator Sanders started talking about it, but I got to help write the bill that we introduced together, and the part I got to work on was this transition, having a 4-year transition where people could buy in at a price they could afford, which to me just creates competition. It allows people to choose whether or not they want that public option, whether they want access to Medicare at an affordable price. But if it is at 4% of income, that's affordable. If you make $100,000 and you have to pay $4,000 to have access, that's affordable and probably less than you're paying today. And it would be self-sustaining, especially if you let Americans buy in over time and ultimately make it single payer and an earned benefit.
One of the things that we don't hear as much within the Democratic primary debate thus far, but we hear a lot from the president's allies, is that 2+ years into the Trump administration, the economy is doing reasonably well, that unemployment is down within overall in a lot of groups. What is your rebuttal to that? Let's say you became the nominee and you're actually debating Trump on that point. What's your rebuttal and what's your job's plan?
So I've talked to a lot of voters across my state, across these early primary states, and I can tell you, people feel deeply left behind. Unemployment number might be low, but real unemployment's much higher, and the underemployment rate is even higher. If you look at 2 states like New Hampshire and Iowa, they have low unemployment rates, but I ask voters across those states, do you feel underemployed? And overwhelmingly, people say yes. So I am running on a platform of how we start rewarding work again. And to me, that means supporting our unions, making sure people can organize and collectively bargain, making sure that we support card check, making sure that we oppose right to work, making sure we have better workforce training. In fact, I think our national ambition should be full employment, because if you're one of the people underemployed or unemployed, you need to be earning more to make ends meet. And the way I would do it is I would fund the job training at community colleges, state schools, apprenticeship programs, and not-for-profits. We are doing that all across my state, all across the country. I'll give you one example. In rural America, we have a manufacturer called Bombardier, and they needed advanced welders. They couldn't find any within 500 miles. So they went to the local community college and said, will you offer this coursework? If you do, we'll hire your graduates. It's a $70,000 a year job. Win-win. You took a lower wage worker who had basic welding skills, made him an advanced welder, and now he's supporting his family and earning more. That's the model that's been done all across the country, all across the states I visited, and I can lift up these community colleges that are already doing it and actually giving people better skills to get a higher wage so they can provide for their families. So if our ambition is full employment, we're going to be able to reward work. And that also means simple things like raising the minimum wage to a living wage, equal pay for equal work, affordable daycare, and having a national paid leave plan.
So we've talked about some of the policies you're pushing, and we talked about some of the domestic policy issues writ large. The other big story in the town that you're in has been the reaction to Mueller finishing his probe on Friday. And so I kind of want to ask you 2 questions before I let you go on that. Number one, your response to the fact that Mueller did not find a chargeable election conspiracy. And number 2, your assessment of how Bill Barr is handling and overseeing the conclusion of this probe thus far from Friday to today.
Well, I'm very concerned because I think what the Attorney General did is undermine the purpose of the special counsel's job by summarizing this report and putting his imprimatur on top of it. He's taking away the benefit of having someone who's nonpartisan, not appointed by the president, actually making the decision about whether a crime has been committed. And importantly, the 4-page letter, he quotes the special counsel saying that he was not going to opine on whether obstruction of justice actually took place. And that was a meaningful quote, and I think that's why the committees in the House are going to do significant investigations to get to the bottom of it. And I think Speaker Pelosi is quite right when she says it was not only arrogant, but very disrespectful for the Congress and the Senate to not receive the actual report.
And for him to sort of try to supplant it. Before I let you go, the other part, no chargeable conspiracy, your reaction?
I think this is something that we need to have the actual report to assess ourselves. I don't think we have to take the word of the Attorney General in a 4-page brief that is a 300-page actual report summarized to 4 pages. Why do we have to accept his summary of the facts?
So your point being, although we do know as of Friday, there's the absence of Mueller charging anyone on the election conspiracy, you're saying you want to see whatever led to his conclusion on that in the report.
Exactly. And I also want to see why he wasn't willing to opine on obstruction, because the law is vague. The law is vague there. And so he didn't necessarily want to put his judgment, but I want to know why he wasn't even certain. I want to know what he found.
Senator Gillibrand, I really appreciate you coming on The Beat as a candidate. I hope we can have you back.
You can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.